Wakefield, it's Nolan Carr Night Show starring Nolan. Invite you to join Nolan's guest this week, Rosie Langello, for the Season 3 finale episode. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Nolan. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Nolan Carr Night Show. And I didn't realize this beforehand, folks. And as I was putting stuff together, I realized that this is a special episode. There'll be one recording that'll come before this, but this is the season finale, Season 3 finale episode of this. So I was pretty happy about that. So once again, to everyone out there who is tuned in with us, and as I usually say, and I know this will get my dear mother a little upset that I'm down on myself about this, for all the millions and millions of people who tune into this week after week, the same level as, Joe Rogan. Thank you for tuning in for that, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you do myself a favor and like, subscribe, share, and follow. But without further ado, enough promotion. You can say it to later at the end again. But my guest this week currently works at WPRI 12 as a sports reporter and anchor, the one and only Rosie Langello. Thank you for joining us this week.
I'm on the finale. This is so great. Thank you for having me.
Well, as I said, and as I was stumbling when I was saying, I didn't think of it. I knew it was coming up eventually. But as I was putting the notes together last minute last night, I said, wow, this is the end of one season, because big time, like television. And I said might as well go through with it and have this be the final conclusion. I can save Don Coin for the episode beforehand. But no, as I always like to do with my guests, I like to catch up. So how's life for Miss Rosie doing during this wild times we find ourselves in?
It's been so much better than last year. This is kind of my second year here in Providence, and it's been so much better. I'm finally seeing what this market can bring, and it's been awesome. I'm only getting even a little taste of it. We're still not back to complete normalcy in the sports world, right? And that's, not going into the locker room and the Patriots and stuff, but compared to what we had last year, it's been great. The run now that the Sox hopefully make, it has been so much fun to cover. And then Tom Brady was just here, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm so happy that I get to be here and finally cover the things that I've been wanting to cover.
As a Yankees fan, I wasn't too happy about that. But as I said I'm trying to think of who it was. Was it? I forget who it was I mentioned to, but as always, there was a switch and the Yankees blew it as always. But no, I'm curious. Obviously, you joined here during the pandemic, not the beginning, but in the thick of it. What was that like starting out here while this whole thing was going on?
It was really strange, and I think I was very naive to starting a job in a pandemic, just because I don't think who's really done that, Yeah. And so I got here. It was August 2020 now, and from where I came from in Pennsylvania, there wasn't a lot of people that thought the pandemic was a real thing. I'm not going to lie. And then I got up here, and it was really on complete lockdown. It was a complete 180. I was not really expecting that. And it was weird. I felt like I couldn't do much. I couldn't get to know coaches. I couldn't really get to know the players. Like the high school was different. There wasn't even, high school football in the fall then. Yeah. So it was very, very strange. Just trying to get on board and learn the team in the Patriots and go up there and having to do stand-ups in a parking lot, which we still do here and there. But it's a completely different atmosphere now when you get to be really close to these players and kind of see what they're like up close. It changes your perspective. And it was just a very odd time. I'm kind of happy that year is over and done with. But I would not recommend to anyone starting a new job in a pandemic.
Well, I'm sure it was very stressful, and I'm sure you're probably like, what the heck am I doing here? And another note, known in Rhode Island, there was a changing of the guards for the sports department. I'm curious from your perspective, what's that been like after he left and now that, there's a new sheriff in town?
Yeah. So when I was interviewing for the job, Ruthie Polinsky called me, and she used to work in the sports department. And she was like, hey, you got to take this job. Yanni and Maury are absolutely fantastic, along with JP Smallins. They are a great team. You have to take this job. You're going to love them. I was like, all right, great. So I got here, and she was exactly right. We all got along so well. And when Yanni left, obviously I was very disappointed because Yanni's the best. But Maury has been absolutely outstanding. And I tell him that every single week. He's a year younger than me, but you would never know it. He is so organized and so to the point and just wants our team to succeed. And it definitely shows on air and just through his presence and what we do. And he's really dedicated to the job. And it kind of feels like he's been a sports director his entire life with how he acts. But he's been very helpful towards me as well. And to our newest sports anchor, Taylor Begley, too. He's always there if we need him for a call, any questions, advice. He's always there. And he's been really great.
Well, when I was talking to him on here, when I had him on here a few weeks ago, I could tell he was very serious and very, gung ho about, the field, which is what you want. And I wasn't taken aback from that, but it was really, interesting to see, even from an early age that he, is really passionate about this. So that's good for him. Now, as you mentioned, coming from Pennsylvania, the big teams, Steelers, Eagles, Phillies, and 76ers. Now, they haven't had recent success like the Patriots and other New England teams, but, early 2000s, they were decent. So as someone, I don't know if you were a fan of that. You may be a fan of, New York teams, seeing as Pennsylvania is somewhat close to it. But your assessment so far of your home state teams, if you can.
So the current state of them, not great. But growing up, one of the big reasons why I got into sports in general was listening to Harry Callis, the voice of the Phillies back in the day. My dad and I would sit down on the couch and listen to the sports announcers every single day. And Harry Callis was a huge inspiration to me growing up. I was like, wow, I want to do play-by-play for baseball. I want to be just like Harry. It was great. And, the Phillies made their World Series run and things like that. The Sixers are the Sixers. And I could talk for probably an hour and a half about them, but I'm not going to do that. We should have kept Jimmy Butler. That's all I'm going to say on that front. Ben, get out. See ya. Goodbye. That's fine. I'm just so mad that I stuck up for him for so many years. The Phillies are the Phillies. Unfortunately, I really haven't been paying much attention to them in the last couple of years. I'll admit that. And I need to get back into that. And the Eagles, had great success. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl. They beat the Patriots, and now they're just kind of working to rebuild. A huge embarrassment the other week when we got, blown out by the Cowboys. So maybe the Patriots will give me some hope, and maybe they'll give them a run for their money coming up here.
Well, I need Jalen Hurts to do better because he's my starting quarterback in fantasy. So I need him to get his stuff in going. But I have the similar attitude about Ben Simmons. I'm not a 76ers fan. I'm not going to say who my team is because, at this point it's rebuild and it's sort of, embarrassing to a degree. But no, $250 million and the man's complaining about playing time and whatnot. Now you mentioned, about Brady being back in town. He's been in the news as of lately in terms of his relationship with Belichick and the organization and how that kind of fell apart to a degree. Your thoughts and, your viewpoint on that situation.
So I think that it's all being kept under the wraps. I don't think really anyone's going to know the story, the truth at least, right? And I think in a way, maybe it should stay that way because like Tom has said, it's personal. And that is personal. When you know someone for that long, for 20 years, and you've had so much success, and then there's a breakup, maybe there was a little rift here and there in between, like there has to be, right? But at the same time, it's between them, and no matter who writes what, no matter who someone sees something, it's going to always stay between them. And with Seth Wickersham releasing this book soon, Belichick said he didn't even, talk to Seth and stuff and things like that. But I think there's been talks over the years, right? There has to be. But at the same time, that's a door that we're never going to see open. And it's a door that we're never going to know the truth, right? There may have been some bad blood for a period of time, but think about it. They broke up like in the mid-pandemic or when the pandemic was starting, to happen. So not a great time for them, but we're just never going to know. Yeah. We're never going to know the full truth.
You'll never get secrets out of Bill Belichick or people like Greg Popovich who going to open their mouths. Now on another note, was just happened yesterday. Why am I forgetting his name? Oh, Gilmore. Just went to Carolina, who's done surprisingly well so far this year. When you saw that or read about that, what was going through your head?
So I got home that the night before at like, I don't know. I think it was late. It was like 2:00, right? So I went to bed maybe around just after I calmed down. It was like 3:30. I went to bed in the morning. And I had my alarm set every day for like 8:05 in the morning, just so I can like get up and get going. And my alarm went off and I looked over at my phone, like half asleep, one eye open. And I'm like, oh, that's how today is going to go. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was shocked for sure, but, I see why it's happening, right? He's a 31-year-old cornerback, hasn't played this season, still recovering from this torn quad, the surgery. Basically, I think it really had to do with his contract. They couldn't settle on it. And the Patriots, the salary cap, I mean, they had $54,000, no money really for any big moves. And Stefan with this trade has freed up so much money. So I think that played a really big part in this. Plus, there's a lot of younger cornerbacks that are going to be available in free agency soon, right? So I think Bill Belichick is kind of just thinking like, do we really need this guy? Because the defense has been really good without Stephon Gilmore, right? Yeah, they're 1-3, but they just held Tom Brady to 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
And Matt Judon is proving to be one of the best defensive players in the league right now, let alone he's on the Patriots. So I also think that he believes in JC Jackson. This is a guy that we keep seeing improving from week to week. And I say you pay JC good money to stay because you do need someone to replace Stefan. And JC might be your guy.
Now, if we can go back, I don't know if you want to, but I as I usually do, I like to go back and start from the beginning of ground zero. Now, as it's been mentioned, growing up in Pennsylvania, graduating from Bloomsburg in 2016. What was it about? What was that school? Did they have a program that was good with journalism, or is it just, it's in my home state and, might as well just go there?
So it's funny you asked. I was not a journalism major until maybe like the last, maybe it was my senior year. I was a journalism major. That's it. I went in wanting to be in the medical field. My mom was a nurse. And I wanted to not be a nurse, but be like it's called a surgical tech. They hand the surgeon the tools. I'm really interested in the body and exercise science and how the body works. And while I sound passionate about it, the science behind it just didn't click with my brain. Unfortunately, I didn't do well my first 3 years of college, but on the side, I would write for the .com. It was called bunow.com. And I loved doing that. I loved going around campus or just kind of like aggregating content on the internet and writing about it. And I'm like, why am I not doing this? Right. Yeah. And I grew up playing sports, around sports my entire life. I was really passionate about it. So I switched to the journalism major and I made sure I graduated on time. And they do have a really good program with really good professors that unfortunately I only got to see for a year. So that's kind of how that happened. Got in a late start, but I think I'm making up for it now.
Well, then after that, after doing my extensive research, thanks to WPRI12.com, and then Northwestern came about, and which is known very well for their journalism department. I believe J.A. Donde is running the ship for that now.
Yep.
But I'm sure for that, I don't know what the competitive field was for Bloomsburg, but for Northwestern, I would think it'd be very competitive to get into that school. I'm sure the stress level for that must have been high. What was that, and what brought you towards Northwestern?
Yeah, so I did not think I was going to get into that school because I had 1 year of journalism experience in undergrad, but it was actually the perfect mix of I still need to learn more, and they were looking to teach, more students who didn't have a lot of experience. Excuse me, there's a call. Let me just get back to you. There you go. So yeah, I applied, I got in, I got a scholarship. And I was like, hey, Dad, let's do this. I really want to go. And yes, it was a lot of money, but I had the best year of my life.
Yeah.
And as a 22-year-old living in Chicago and getting to experience all these great things that Northwestern had to offer, it was a dream come true. I learned so much being at that school. But yes, it was competitive, but it really, taught me how the field is too. Like journalism is competitive.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of my first taste of it in school. But I made, these people are still my best friends. I still talk to them every single day. And it's been 5 years later, which, wow, I sound old saying that. But yeah, Northwestern was a great decision. Maybe not for my wallet, but definitely looking back now, it was, because the connections too are just out of this world.
Between what you learned there in that 1 year at Northwestern, did that help with your early experiences in the field?
Yeah. And what's really strange is we went to Super Bowl 51 down in Houston when, the Patriots made that spectacular comeback against the Falcons. And we didn't get to go in the game, but we got to go to the pressers beforehand and the pressers afterwards. So it was Tom Brady's, winning press conference, and, Bill Belichick was there too. So we're all in this big room, and, the first question is asked to Bill Belichick, and it's this guy that's like, "Hey, Bill, blah, 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 when are you going to name your boat 7 rings or something?" And I was like, who is this guy asking this question? Turns out to be Yanni Caracas. And I find out years later, and this guy's my boss. And I'm like, wow, the fact that I was in the same room as this guy, had no idea. I could have connected with him then and just didn't, know who he was. But yeah, those experiences at Northwestern were big, and it's kind of prepared me for the big moments that we're having, my gosh, the last 2 weeks here. Right. And in my old market too, we had some pretty big games, and it definitely prepared me for that.
After you spent time with WRE, WYOU in Wilkes-Barre, you made a big time move to WTAJ in Altoona. Now, covering for your school, I would think, is something, and covering for a US whatever it is, but actually being on television the first time and actually doing something like that is a different environment for you. What was that experience like in terms of applying for the job and then getting it, and then that first time doing it?
Yeah, so I was a producer at WPRI and then transferred over to Altoona. And yeah, I kind of used my producing skills and transferred them onto TV. And I'll never forget, my first live shot was during, a Penn State, Ohio State game. And the game wasn't over, but someone had to go live for sports. And so I stepped out of Beaver Stadium and just talked about the game, which was really easy to do. But it was still going on, and you could hear, the crowd going wild. So you knew something was going on, but you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
So it was nerve-wracking. Like, I'm not going to lie, those first couple of live shots, I was nervous for sure. Sometimes I still do get nervous. I'm definitely more comfortable. But those nerves kind of go away. And I kind of relate it back to being on stage. I did a lot of acting when I was little. It's like stage fright, but it's a good stage fright, right? And you just kind of get over it and you do your thing. And then once you're done, you're like, wow, why did I build that up to be something that it wasn't? It was just, you just act like you're talking to your mom and dad through a camera. Yeah. And that's what I've always told myself. And it really helped calm me down in that first market in Altoona. But that was a great market to start. Covering Penn State athletics here and there with the Steelers. It was a blast. It was so much fun. And I loved that market. It was great. It was a great experience.
Well, besides Pennsylvania, now you're a part of the greatest state, I think, and United States, besides Florida. Although Florida right now is having little issues with believing what's real and what's not real. But
right.
But this isn't what's his name? State of the Union show on WPRI 12. But now you're here at Rhode Island, and you obviously, learning experience and stuff like that. Did most of that translate over to WPRI 12, or did you have to kind of change the way you operate in terms of as a sports journalist?
Yeah. So my first market, it was really about just getting the reps, getting to know the camera, because let's face it, as like a sports MMJ now, your job is shooting. Right? Like you have to shoot everything with your camera. So it's something that you need to learn in your first market. Because in your second market, like I'm in right now, well, technically third, that should be behind you, right? That should be the last thing you're thinking about, because those skills you've already acquired in your first market. So this market has really taught me, like, performance on camera is definitely something that I've been working on for sure. But this market has also taught me, and Maury's a big component in this, is building relationships. And I kind of have the time to do that now that we're not really in the pandemic as much anymore. Building relationships, meeting new people, and just having a coach's phone number in my cell phone, being like, hey, blah, blah, I need this or information and stuff like that. So it's taught me urgency, building relationships, and just calming down when you're on camera and just speaking normal, not getting all worked up and things like that. In those first markets, you're just so excited to be there and things like that. And it kind of shows. And now it's just about the delivery and using all that information that you've gathered and just delivering it well.
For you though, and I asked this to the last few guests, obviously the news profession, journalism, has been under fire the last 6 years or so, for whatever you want to believe in it. And obviously, you're in sports, but for you, how important is it for you to make sure that that margin of error of delivering, the important news but also, make sure it's factually correct when you're doing the job?
Yeah, always. Oh, it's very important. And you may not know this, a lot of people don't, but I'm only sports from, I'd say, end of July to February, right? And then I transfer back into news. So I do news and sports here. And the news side of things really taught me, and not that sports didn't, but news really taught me, like, hey, like, people, I mean, if you're going to cover a car accident and someone's loved one, it passes away, which has happened, you got to go knock on a door. And I'll never forget the first time I did that here. It was scary, but that's, it's information that people do want to know, because they want to know about the person who passed away and what their loved ones thought of them. And you got to get all those facts right. Because imagine talking about someone who passed away and you got the facts wrong. It's just like, what are you doing to that family and things like that? So yes, it's extremely important in this day and age, for sure. It's always been important, but with all the scrutiny and things that have come under fire with journalists, it's more important than ever.
Does it make you strive to become the best journalist you can in this area?
Sorry, you just broke up there. I got a call. Could you repeat the question?
No. So in that situation, then does it? I'm sure it creates a level of stress, but then also I'm sure it makes you want to be the best journalist and reporter around.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's something that's always in the back of your head to get the facts right. But when you're kind of like on autopilot here, it should. It shouldn't come across as like, oh, I don't know the facts or things like that. If you're in the story, in the moment, you know what you're doing. You're not saying anything wrong, but you always just have to double check. And we have a really good team, sports and news wise, that if I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure about that, I give a quick phone call to the newsroom. They got me. They'll check it out. We'll make sure it's right, because things that we're putting on air obviously need to be factual. But if you're unsure of something, you have the team behind you.
Now, I'm curious, in life, it's something, just getting a job like this and being on television and people know who you are is, a big deal. But then sometimes you're able to win things like the Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasters Award for the job you do. Does that, hold a big significance for you, and make you enjoy this field more?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my ultimate goal is to win at least one Emmy. I love feature reporting. It's my favorite thing to do during the sports season and in the height of the Patriots and stuff. It's really hard to tell those stories just because we're so busy. But this summer, I was really able to deep dive into some great stories. And yeah, winning awards like that is definitely a confidence booster. And I love that about this job, but it doesn't mean that, you make more money. It doesn't mean that you're better than someone else. It's just like, hey, we thought this story was great. And, it keeps you moving, you keep on going. But my ultimate goal has always just to win at least one Emmy.
Uh-oh, you cut out. Frozen.
Oh, I think I lost you for a quick
no,
second.
You're
there
frozen
you go.
for a second. But no, I mean, yeah, it definitely, I would think, would make you strive to, continue doing that. But now, as we've reached the end of this wonderful, amazing episode, I like to do what I always do, the one-word challenge. Now, for those who never tuned in before, don't know what it is, my wonderful guest this week. The one-word challenge, what it is, myself, the host of this wonderful show, puts together a list of topics or phrases, whatever it is, that has something to do with the field of that guest or that guest in general. So I'll name a few and then just try to say one word or a sentence that comes to your mind when I say
Okay.
it. Sports journalism.
I'm like trying to be choosy with my words. A blast.
Central PA.
Country.
The Medill School of Journalism.
Prestigious.
WPRI 12.
A lot of fun.
Rhode Island.
Cute.
And Rosie Langello.
Tired right now. But I'm drinking my morning coffee. Yes. So
I God bless you. Never got into drinking coffee, so I just run on pure adrenaline. Looking forward to the weekend. But no, that was
cool. I like that.
With that being said, I want to thank you, Rosie, for joining us this week on the program. As I mentioned to you before we started rolling, and this speaks, I think, to the volume. I think for those who work at your station that I've talked to or have had on before, for you to get back immediately to someone like myself who you have no idea who it is and jump to the opportunity to do it, even provide different contact information to contact you with this and stuff, means a whole heck of a lot to myself and speaks to the quality of person you are. So thank you for taking that time out of your morning to do this for me.
Of course, it's been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Now, for all those out there who enjoyed the show, who have been here from all 3 seasons, if you like what you watch, do myself and the guest a favor. Subscribe the heck out of the show on YouTube. Follow on the audio platforms. Leave a like, comment, share, all that good stuff. So it tells myself and the guest, because she's very curious about it, that you're invested into the show. You want to see it boom, because one day it's going to be like Joe Rogan. You're going to watch later on and be like, hey, this episode early season 3, episode 14 with Nolan Carr and Rosie Langello was amazing. I can't wait to tune in more. And if you want to know any news, information, updates on the show, follow on Instagram, the Nolan Carr at Night Show, and on Twitter, Nolan Carr at Night. Rosie, would you like to plug anything, or are you all set with?
No, subscribe and follow your podcast for sure. It's been a blast. This is so cool. I'm glad that you do this.
Oh, well, someone had to do something during the pandemic, or else they would have gone crazy and joined a different group. But no, I thank you. And here's to season 4. And in the words of Johnny Carson, I bid you a heartfelt good night.